Welcome back to another edition of the Here We Go podcast. I am your host, Trent Ging, and you can see my guest with me today, Lowry. How are we doing today?
All right, and you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm doing pretty good. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit of a rumored news that's going to be floating around. Some people may have seen it. I think it was a hot topic a little bit. We're also going to be talking about some like internal, possible internal trade candidates, maybe some cut candidates, things like that. So I'm actually going to start with the latter part of that. Of course, we know Colin, he's planning on joining us later. So we want to save the good stuff for him when he gets in here. So let me just start by asking you this. Is there anyone on the team right now under contract that you could see kind of being thrown out there on the trading block, or maybe thrown out there as just trade bait, just to see what the market is?
Trade bait. I can see obviously Pickens. I don't think that will come to pass. I can see Minkah. Don't think anything will come to pass. Maybe, and this might shock people, maybe Broderick Jones's name will be mentioned out there just because of, I don't know, the fact that they've struggled to find him on the right side, and they have seemed to be reluctant to try him on the left side in the 2 years. That's just one of those, I'm throwing a spitball out there. I have no proof or anything. So what about you?
I mean, Broderick Jones is an interesting name. So if you were going to throw him out there as a possible trade piece, do you anticipate that we're looking at signing a tackle in free agency, like a starter more so than a rotational piece?
I would think starter, or they try to get more back, or they hit the draft. I mean, I don't see it happening. I would love to see Jones get the shot at left tackle. I just, for some reason, if they're trying to build for the future and they've just seemed to be reluctant, like I said, like when they had Moore and Okafor, and Moore went down for a game or two and Jones went in, everybody thought Jones did a good enough job that he was going to stay there. And then Moore came right back in, and that was the last time Jones ever spent there. So just kind of, well, are they going to do that? And then all the rumors about, Troy to guard. I don't know. If they're going to move a piece that might get them a big return that isn't Pickens or Minkah, that'd be the other guy that I think might be out there, because I don't see anybody else out there that they'd move. I mean, they're not moving Cam. They're not going to move TJ. I think TJ would give them a huge return. I just don't see that.
Yeah. Broderick would be, I think that would be pretty crazy if they did move him. He's a guy that's, you invested a first-round pick in a high first-round pick. I mean, you're talking, what was he, 15? 7? They moved up to 17 to get him. So that'd be a crazy move. I think the plan is to play him at left tackle this year, and I think Falatanu at right tackle. I would certainly hope so at this point. I mean, you're talking year 3, and your left tackle of the future has not played left tackle at all, except for the game that it was. I think it was one game and a half, maybe, like you mentioned. Like, I think Dan Moore got hurt, and then he started the next week at left tackle, and I think that was the only time we've ever seen him at left tackle outside of a preseason game. So, yep. That would be kind of a wild one for me. If they move that direction, that's a colossal error as a draft pick, that is, in my opinion. That'd agree. Be kind of crazy. Yep. So Minkah Fitzpatrick was another name that you brought up there. What about the fact that we've seen really no splash plays out of Minkah Fitzpatrick? Is that anything that kind of bothers you? Do you think that factors into their decision-making at all, or where are you at with that part?
I don't mind the splash plays missing. I don't. My issue is the tackles, and it's hard from sitting from a couch and watching it versus sitting in a coach's room and hearing how they design the plays and who had some of the coverage responsibilities. when we watch like the all 22 and we're sitting there saying, oh, well, this is his responsibility without knowing what Austin's actual game plan was. So there's questions where I was like, okay, well, did Minkah guess wrong and cover the wrong person, or did somebody else kind of leave Minkah out to dry? So there's that. What my concern has been is more like is he missing a coverage assignment? Is he missing a tackle? I'm more worried about that than I am about, oh, wow, he didn't have 4 picks this year. He didn't get 3 fumbles this year. He didn't have a field goal block this year. Well, you know what? We didn't pick that up anywhere else on the team. So are we going to trade everybody else in our secondary because that doesn't have a splash play either? It is just because of Minkah's name. So it's because of his price tag. We expect more out of him. Well, there's a reason that teams don't throw towards Minkah either. So I don't know. He's not the splash. I'm not looking. I want him to be sound fundamentally. I want the guys in our front 7 to get those splash plays.
Yeah. I mean, this might be a little controversial, but his cap number in 2025 is $22.355 million. $22 million for a safety is extremely high priced. So, I mean, I'm not going to blame Minkah Fitzpatrick, and I was pretty strong on that all year. I'd never really blame Minkah necessarily for the things that he was doing or the fact that he wasn't getting the splash plays. I thought it was more of a coaching decision and the positioning they were using him in, because there was times he was like 20 yards off the ball. And I'm like, my gosh, how deep can you possibly – I get it to one deep safety, but how deep? That's like prevent deep. Like you're getting way, way off the ball. How is he supposed to make a play on the ball at that point? Because it's so difficult, I think, to come from that kind of range to try to get to the ball unless it's just a shot downfield. So I agree with you on the fact that teams stay away from him. The only piece of this I think could be a little bit interesting is just the fact that cap number is so high for that. It's become such a non-premium position. Could you go get a guy for much cheaper to play that same role, even if it's not at the level of Minkah Fitzpatrick? I mean, would you entertain it? What if you got a 3rd round pick?
No.
And the other team assumed most of the salary cap?
No, not to me. And the reason why is the last season, not this past season, but the season before, right? I think that was the first one we were without Edmonds back there with him. And we had average safety play. We've seen what happens when we have average safeties back there. So we're going to get rid of Minkah and get average safeties back there. It hasn't worked out well. And I like the fact that we have Elliott back there with him. And Elliott when he was out there with Minkah, they looked better. And I think if you're going to get rid of Minkah, I still think he's maybe not a superstar that we want to pay a superstar price for, but I still think he's a star level player capable of superstar moments. I don't want to lose that for an average guy just because, okay, well, we're going to save a couple bucks. If it was, let's say we were paying Kazi, right? If we were paying
KZ.
Yeah, there it is, DeMonte. If we were paying him, $15 million, okay, cut him, get an average guy. Because you're paying an average guy superstar money or star money. Okay, cool. But I think we're paying Minkah superstar money, and he is still a star player. If somebody comes to the table and says, I'm going to give you a 3rd this year and a 3rd next year, then I'm going to start entertaining it. 2nd this year, I'm going to start thinking about it. But if it's just a 3rd off the top and we're going to take some of your cap hit, I don't think I would. I'd take the phone call, but I'd take the phone call off of anybody on the team right now. There's not a single player I would be like, yeah, I'm never going to pick up the phone for. I'd entertain every single player on that team. Somebody calls, I just might not accept the trade.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at some of the free agents right now. Justin Reed was the highest paid at $10.5 million.
Okay.
Do you feel like play between a guy like Justin Reed and Minkah Fitzpatrick was literally double in value. I mean, 22 million versus 10.5.
I think Justin Reed had a better season statistically speaking than Minkah. But I think if you actually traded teams, I think Minkah would have been just as successful, if not more so. Just basically, once again, they didn't make any coaching changes, but I go back to when you're going out there and playing a vanilla style defense and not making a lot of things, and you're basically letting your superstars try to do everything. Sometimes, we hear what's coming. And I think I think Reed had a better ability out there to make those plays than Minkah did. He had a better support structure around him, coaching wise, than Minkah did this year.
I mean, I don't know if there's a ton of guys on this list that I would say should be in that conversation. Justin Simmons might be another guy you could put in that conversation. He was at $7.5 million this year for the Falcons.
How old is Minkah?
Mark, 20.
30? He's 30.
Did he turn 30?
That's what it's showing. So he's 30. So
I was thinking 29.
That's the one part where I'd start scratching my head a little bit now. Is like, okay, look at him at 30 versus Jeremy Chin at 27. So it's like, okay, I can see Trump wanting to get younger. Minkah's not going to, he's getting to that point. But Justin Simmons is about 32.
Oh yeah, he's 31 right now. He'd be, I think, turning 32 next season. So
he's already
Julian. I mean, different position. Julian Blackmon. He'd be another guy that I would look at. But of course, you've got Deshaun Elliott there, so you're probably not going to go that route. So, I mean, I don't know that there's a Javon Holland. Maybe he's a guy that I think would be I don't know what his market's going to be, but he's coming off of his rookie deal right now. So he's probably the most attractive candidate to be a replacement.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought it was an interesting thing just because of that cap hit being so high for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Just thinking about TJ Watt's name is starting to get thrown around a little bit because of his age. People saw him slow down a little bit this year. So what was your thoughts about that? What do you think he is a realistic guy to go on the block? Do you think that he's somebody you would take phone calls over?
I will say the same thing that's gotten me in trouble with Steeler fans for probably the last 2 to 3 years, maybe. There is not a single player on this team that I would not answer a phone call for. If somebody's like, hey, we got somebody wanting to trade for TJ, I wouldn't be like, hang up the phone. I'd be like, all right, what are they going to offer? If somebody came to the table and said, hey, we're going to give you a first this year, a first next year, and a first the year after, plus another two second round picks. You got to entertain it, man. You can't be like, oh, well, no, I'm not going to I'm going to be like, all right, man, he's how many years old? We need to rebuild. That's a legit thought process. I'm going to take it. Now, is that trade going to come through? No. But if somebody's going to call, I'd listen to anything. There's not a player on this team, I think, outside of maybe Cam, just because he's got the 1 year left on his contract now, I think, that I'd be like, all right, I'm not going to listen to a trade. Everybody's on this table. And that goes just simply for the fact that I didn't see anything from anybody that would be like, wow, this is the franchise cornerstone for the next 20 years or 10 years, and we're Super Bowl bound in 5. Like I think I've said to you, like I think 2026 is the year we need to start looking at trending upwards, right? 2025 is that kind of, we need to, in my head, if I was the head coach, which I'm not, and everybody would fire me for, this is the year I would tear it down, be like, all right, this is the year that we're basically saying we are going to rebuild. We are no longer reloading, fans. We are rebuilding. So if you want somebody on my team, this is the year I am willing to trade people to get draft picks for 2026. I'd be willing to make moves for Trevor Lawrence or for probably not Stafford, just based on his age, to build a team in order to get that 26, in order to say, I want to be competitive for a deep playoff run in 27, for Super Bowl in 2028. Because I don't think we're there in 2025. Are we thinking that we're going to be playoff winning in 2025 with the team we got right now? So,
No,
I mean,
I'm laughing at this, James. James James and I, he was having an interaction on one of the shows I did where I said about if the Steelers were going to take a first-round wide receiver, it would be a Minkah Buka, and he'd be the only guy I'd run to the podium for. Outside of him, I'm not drafting a first-round receiver, so I like that
the golden
little shot he's digging in there. That was pretty good. I don't know, man. I listen. First of all, if the scenario you came out with actually happened for TJ Watt, I'm like, okay, here you go.
Right?
I mean, like, you can have TJ if you're giving me that many picks. Because I do think, and I have said this, and I actually did an episode before last season's start. I think it was one of my earlier episodes actually have started doing this, and I said that I thought this team was in a rebuild mode then. I thought that they should acknowledge they were in a rebuild, but the problem is the Pittsburgh Steelers are too stubborn to just absolutely
Rebuild.
acknowledge a rebuild and just say, we're probably not going to win this year. We're not going to keep that Tomlin streak alive. We're going to start getting the right pieces in place for 2026 in this case. And I really think that's kind of where they need to go, which is why I've been so adamant on Justin Fields being the quarterback next year, is just because the price tag, I think, is going to be right. He still does enough to keep you competitive. He's a young guy, so you take a shot, and you know what? If it doesn't work, you're going to give up less capital to trade up to go get your quarterback next year because you're already in a better position because you lost some games, right? Like, I mean, it's a no lose scenario in my opinion. But I don't know. And that's why in some ways I'm in agreement with you, and like no one's untouchable on the team this year.
Yeah.
I think you have to be willing to make moves to get better. You need to acquire capital for next season. James, he's determined to get us into some draft talk right now.
Hey, I wouldn't disagree with that. When I've done those mocks, I've done the defensive lineman in round one, unless I can trade out. And I've tried to do that multiple times to pick up exactly what we're talking about, future picks, And by the way, nobody's saying trade TJ for like a 4th round pick. I don't think anybody's saying that. But if somebody comes with me to a crazy Herschel Walker type deal, are you kidding me? I'm thinking about it all day long.
I'm pulling the trigger on it. I'm not just thinking about it. I'm pulling the trigger on it because, I mean, you've got to be open to moves right now. And I do think Larry Ogunjobi's getting cut. Like, I think that's a done deal, in my opinion, at least in my opinion. Like, there you go. He's first round. He's saying yes. I think going back to this, so just because like Alan and I did the show yesterday, and he said he would absolutely go defensive line round 1. And so again, if it's not a Buka, I'm doing the same thing. And I really honestly, I have also said multiple times now on here that I do think they take 2 defensive linemen within the first 4 rounds. I don't think it's just 1. I think they're going to take 2. Because of exactly what he's saying here with cutting Larry Ogunjobi. I think that, in my opinion, you need to get a true nose tackle, move Benton down to be the defensive tackle in Larry O's spot. And I think that Larry O gets cut. I also think you need depth. Number 1, Cam Hayward is not getting any younger, so you need some depth behind him. We have no clue whatsoever if we're going to get back to Marvin Leal. What position is he going to be in? Is he going to be in shape, out of shape? Is he able to play? I mean, you're talking about a neck injury. You don't know how that's going to heal up. So, I mean, I don't know.
That goes we can go
Go
back
ahead.
kind of what you're even saying about like, okay, people that we can cut, people we can trade, and people signing, right? So you cut Larry O. We already, even if let's say we don't cut Larry O, I still take two people in that to look at defensive line twice in that first 4 rounds because he's old. Cam is old. We have Ben, and exactly what you said about Leo. We don't know what he's going to be. So I would love to go back to the days where we had Aaron Smith out there and Kiesel out there and Hampton out there, where we had 2 ends and a nose tackle. Right now, I can honestly tell you we got Cam Hayward, who seems to play every position on the line, and then we have linebackers who fill on the ends when we go to the dimes and nickels. And then we throw Benton out there and hope to God we got something, right? Like, it doesn't seem like we don't have those guys where we're like, oh, wow, we can run our 3-4 and let them eat up the run game and still be able to attack the passing game. And I think that's why we rotate into those sub packages as much as we do, because we don't trust our defensive line to hold up in a run game or in the passing game anymore. So give me those linemen that we need. And unless a stud wide receiver drops or some unknown reason Cam Ward has a Aaron Rodgers NFL draft day drop, I'm picking a lineman.
Let me ask you this just to kind of wrap up the trade talk. George Pickens, I think, is the most realistic of anyone on the team that could potentially be traded. Do you think that actually happens?
No. And I mean, you've talked about this. I think if it happens as a trade deadline trade because something else occurs during the season that rather he's not performing, this team's not performing, and they get some sort of amazing deal at the trade deadline. I think the draft, I don't see them extending him during the season. I think they'll see what happens after the season, rather tag him or re-sign him if he has this amazing season then. But I think they'll let it ride. I think they'll sign a wide receiver, draft another wide receiver, and go in like that. In my opinion, the best case scenario, you sign Higgins, right? You got Pickens.
Oh, yeah.
And let's say they end up getting Mbuka, or however we pronounce his name. There you go. You have your 3 wide receivers, all you need, and we'll see what happens. And now if draft day comes and Pickens is still doing what he does when he doesn't get the ball, okay, now you can move him, right? No harm, no foul.
Yeah. I think if you're not going to trade him, you need to be in a position as a team to bench him.
Yep.
And that's not where we've been the last couple of years. They've felt like they need him so much that he's kind of untouchable right now, right? I mean, there's no disciplinary action for him. He shows up late to the Kansas City game after the rosters are released to where there's the injury designations already out there, and you can't even you had to pick whether he's going to play or not. And he's not even in the facility to know if like his hamstring's okay. He literally is coming off an injury, which is crazy to me. So,
let me speak to this one. The tag and trade for Higgins. I don't think, if I have the understanding of the tag, and maybe Al Saunders or somebody else with better idea of this can speak, Bengals have to have the cap space to tag him in order to sign and trade him like that. I don't think they do. So if they're going to tag and trade him, they're going to have to make moves and cut people ahead of time. I don't see that happening. So rather they're going to sign him outright and keep him long-term, or he's gone. I do not see them tagging and trading him.
I agree. I actually think based on Joe Burrow's comments recently, he's willing to take a restructure of his contract to keep Higgins in place. And I bet you that happens. I think it's going to be interesting to see what that contract would come out to be for Higgins, because I think $26 million. That's a high price just to tag a guy, in my opinion.
Wide receiver so overpriced. Let me tell you, we talk about running backs being able to get anywhere. You can get wide receivers anywhere. We got guys who are third string wide receivers getting paid $15 million, man.
Unless you're Pittsburgh, and you've got a wide receiver 5 playing as your number 2 in Van Jefferson. So you can get anywhere but in Pittsburgh, apparently.
Oh, yeah, there's a cut guy. We can cut him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you guys, you and Saunders brought up Cordero Patterson. And all I wanted to say when I heard that was, he's not getting cut. He's a Smith guy. So, but yeah,
he's got to go.
I think Higgins ends up somehow miraculously, we'll call it the 49ers way of life. He ends up staying with Bengals. Somehow they managed to magically alter their cap number and he stays.
The Bengals are just hell-bent on offense winning games and having no defense whatsoever step on the football field. I mean, I feel like if we went to Cincinnati this offseason, you and I have a chance to be on their defense.
Oh, yeah. Snoop Dogg.
We might start.
That was the funniest comment I saw on Twitter or whatever we want to call it these days from that honors thing when he was talking about Joe Burrow buying that $2 million Batmobile or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
The only way he gets to Burrow gets to play defense, and he went from all happy to all of a sudden he had that serious look on his face.
Mm-hmm.
Burrow knows he ain't got no defense out there, and it's all going to offense.
Yep, that's hilarious. I think so. Like, I'm going to go through quickly go through some guys that I think are cut candidates. I think the first guy on the list has to be Preston Smith right now, $13.4 million. You cut him, there's no dead cap.
Yeah, his age is why I cut him.
That's an easy cut.
If he was the same guy at 27, sure. At 34, gone.
Yeah. Cole Holcomb, $7.64 million. Dead cap would be 1.64, so you save $6 million there. That's an easy cut.
I tried to restructure him, otherwise he's cut.
Yeah. They can even cut him and bring him back. I mean, he didn't even play this year, so you don't know, what's his health like? And,
well, that's why
can he play?
You could pressure him because of that restructure. Hopefully, this way you can avoid the whole dead cap too. Just restructure.
Patterson, 3.75, 950,000 dead cap. That's an easy cut for me. Then you're starting to kind of get into the weeds, like Dean Lowry, 3.125. He's dead cap 625,000. Not impactful, but still saves $2.5 million. Here's an interesting one. Let me ask you about this one. Montravius Adams, 3.125. Dead cap would be 8.75, but you would save $2.25 million by cutting him.
That one's tough. I don't like the dead cap number to him. And that would all be dead cap this year, right? It's not prorate.
And it's 875,000 in dead cap. So you save $2.25 million.
So I'm sorry.
875 is be all that you would.
I misheard you.
Dead cap.
I thought you said 8 million. Sorry.
No.
Then I'm fine with it. I thought because when you said 8 million, I was like, oh, that's a lot. So that's fine with me. I'd be fine with it. Save the 2 million. I hate to see Lowry get cut because then that's my namesake, man. I just want him to stay on so I can make use of the jersey.
Yeah.
The top 51. That's what he's just saying. So
yeah. Yeah. Displacement.
Yep.
I don't know. There's a number of guys I think in there. I probably wouldn't dig too much deeper into that list, but those are just, to me, some obvious guys that are going to be on that chopping block, if you ask me.
Yeah, he'd be on mine.
Is there anybody on that list that you would disagree with that you would rather see stay? To me, Montravius Adams is the guy that I think of any of them. I like Montravius Adams, but you could probably get another guy that does what he does.
I think that's kind of where I feel the same. Like his cap, open up, if you needed to open up the cap space, then why not? I don't see the reason to keep him, if that makes sense. Like, you keep him if you don't have anybody else. Excuse me, you don't have anybody else. But otherwise, what about here's something, right? Here's a weird one. The punter, Cameron Johnston. All right. So he has a cap hit of, what is it, 3?
Yeah, let me pull it back up here. Cam.
3.5. Oh, never mind. His dead cap would be insane. Am I looking at that
Yeah,
right? Okay, I
his
was looking.
dead cap, if it's post June 1st cut, it's 900. Oh, I lost it. 958. So you would save $2.5 million cutting him.
Do you cut him and keep Corliss Williams?
You'd have to re-sign Waitman.
Or Waitman, that's it.
You'd have to re-sign him because we only signed him for the 1 year deal. So he's not under contract right now. He's he's free to go wherever he wants.
You'd probably end up still saving $2 million.
Yeah.
That would be
weird. But I mean, what would you have to pay Waitman in that case? So I think I'd probably keep Johnston. He was playing phenomenal before the injury, so I think I'd probably just keep him around.
Okay. I was just looking at it from, you probably end up saving $2 million because I think Waitman still ends up being around that $1.2 million to sign versus the 3-4. So you shave off $2 million for that. But that's just one of those weird conversations I have. It's like, okay, you can save $2 million there, and that keep your Adams at that point. But I think Adams is 30 years old. I think you can, you're cutting Ogunjobi. So what makes Ogunjobi more, less valuable to the team than Adams?
I think Larry's done. He's hurt all the time. I mean, he's very rarely played healthy. He played more healthy this season, but I don't know. I think Larry is done.
But same thing with Adams. That's my point. Like, to me, I'd get rid of both of them. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. We absolutely could.
I don't see if you're cutting Ogunjobi, I don't see the reason you'd want to keep Adams too. Might as well. This goes back to my idea. You go through the whole rebuild. You finally, like we were talking about, you finally say, we're not reloading, we're rebuilding. Last year when Ben came back was the year I was like, they need to rebuild. They brought him back. I'm like, okay, they're going to reload. They're going to draft this guy like center or whatever and try to reload. And then they kind of drafted a guard to play center. And then they kind of did a bunch of other picks that I was like, oh, this doesn't seem like they're reloading. It seems like they have no real idea what they want to do around. And then they played like it. And then after Ben left, I'm like, all right, here comes the rebuild. And it was once again, it was like, all right, we're just gonna reload again. It's like you guys are not doing it. You gotta rebuild. You gotta stop letting these things continue. You gotta just tear it down, take that massive hit this year, free up all the dead cap space we can right now, and just move on. So maybe, and then it's like, and it's the same thing. Like, all right, they moved on from Mitch and from KP and signed 2 cheap quarterbacks. I get it. And now we're year number 2. Okay, here we go again. And now it's like, okay, well, I hear Derek Carr's name out there as somebody's going to cut him. Well, here we go again. Are we doing the Wilson thing? Like, okay, he's going to sign for 1.4 because the Saints are covering the rest of the dead cap, and we're going to hope Fields comes on a dirt cheap deal because nobody else is going to pay him. Which, by the way, I think I'm one of the few people that say it. I think people are underestimating how much he's going to get paid. I've been
saying that.
I think there's going to be teams that are going to overpay or offer Fields more money. If the Steelers can't get him signed before free agency, he's going to get overpaid by the Raiders, just because.
Yeah, I think I keep saying I think he's going to come in around that $15 million a year mark, somewhere in there. I really do. So if we're going to get into some quarterback topics, let's go ahead and dive into a big quarterback topic. So the breaking news today was that the Steelers have reportedly inquired about Trevor Lawrence. The package being reported would include a 2025 first and a 2025 second. So let me start with the most obvious question. Does Trevor Lawrence make us a win now football team?
No.
I agree. I think there's too many holes missing to say that if you brought this guy in, I mean, I feel like you're still playing for 2026. I still don't think you've solved all your problems. You push your problems off a year.
But
and so like So where were you? Where are you at with Trevor Lawrence, just as a quarterback in general? Let's take the trade compensation off the table. Where are you at with Trevor Lawrence as a player?
The same spot I think I was with Fields in Chicago, and I know I got like one person pushed back a little bit. Bad team, bad organization, good quarterback. So it's hard to say, oh my God, this guy's just isn't as good as what we thought when he drafted, right? It's kind of like the Baker Mayfield when he was in Cleveland. Let's see what he can get. And yeah, I don't think this team is capable of maybe coaching to grow a quarterback, but Trevor, I think, has already grown. He has the tools. What he doesn't have around him is a team, a defense, and an organization. And I think the Steelers are better around him than Jacksonville has been. You know, with the exception of the wide receivers. I think Jacksonville had better wide receivers than we did last year. But hey, we can always get Christian Kirk. I think he upgrades that for us. And I think he doesn't run as athletically as Fields does, but I think he sees the field better than Fields does. So it really would depend on what type of offense you want in Pittsburgh. If you want to have an RPO style offense, something more of what Baltimore runs, then you're going to want somebody like Fields back there. If you want something more like Cincinnati runs, you're going to want somebody like Trevor Lawrence back there.
Yeah. I think the good thing about Trevor Lawrence, you would have a quarterback all the way through 2028.
Oh, that you have
the way his contract is structured. 17 this year, 24 million next year, 35 million 2027, and then 47 million in 2028. Then it gets into the crazy numbers for a couple of years, but you could cut him at that point. You could trade him. You could restructure. I mean, there's just a number of things. It's really a guaranteed contract through 27, and then it becomes, half guaranteed money in 28.
Oh yeah, you technically got him under contract through 30 with a couple options in 29, 30, I think, and 28. Yeah. You can get out from under it in 28. So I like that. The long term, you're set right there, and the first couple of years of that contract are manageable enough where, in my head, right? So everybody talks about, well, you got so many holes, you can't win now. You're right. You don't have the team around him, but you'd still have room enough to go out and sign Trey Smith. If you traded for him, you couldn't sign Trey Smith. So that fills your guard need, right? So there you got him. And if you wanted to, something that we've discussed, trying to bring back James Daniels still. So now all of a sudden you got your offensive line seems to be pretty solid next year to help Trevor Lawrence. Now all of a sudden you might not be able to get T. Higgins if you sign Trey Smith, if you have Trevor, but you still can go out and get Slayton. You can still get, a couple of the second rung wide receivers that are below Higgins out there. Like the Hollywood Brown, get him on that dirt cheap deal to prove it. So you can still manage to get a team around him that still can probably win 10, 11 games next year. And not set yourself back in any picks for the year after. I just don't see that happening. Like, I don't see Jacksonville pulling the cord on Trevor because of the type of contract it is. Plus, Trevor in that contract has a no trade clause. And I think I was talking to my friend about this. If I'm Trevor and somebody comes to me, there's 28 teams in the NFL I'm saying yes to without hesitation. 2 of them would be in Ohio that I would say no to. But I don't have to worry Bengals aren't coming to get me because they got Burrow.
Right.
But I wouldn't touch the other one. And I'm not going to the Jets. But Pittsburgh comes calling? Sure. Get me out of Jacksonville. There's a lot of teams I've gone to go to, but Jacksonville is not stupid. Let me rephrase that. Jacksonville isn't stupid enough to make that trade.
Yeah, I don't know if this, when I first saw it, the first thing that popped in my head was, this is like prime. This is the dead period. You're between the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl. The Combine hasn't quite started yet. Let's get the rumor mill churning so we've got some things to talk about and we've got some things to start writing about, which is why we're doing this tonight, right? There's something for us to talk about. So I felt like this was more like, let's find something to talk about. Now, there's there's intrigue there. I mean, because the contract's not that bad to have a young quarterback who still is growing and still has I mean, he has a ton of talent. I don't think that's deniable. I don't think he's played bad. He's not lived up to the can't miss hype that he had coming in. But at the same token, like you said, Jacksonville was kind of a train wreck, and they're still a bit of a train wreck, right? So he took them to the playoffs.
Well,
I mean,
he's got
something to be said about that.
I think he's had the number of coaches and offensive coordinators that Fields has had.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I think part of it also, my issue is that like every time a player has to be traded, the Steelers are connected. Like it doesn't matter the position or the name. Somehow the Steelers are a destination. The Steelers are inquired. And I feel like, and I don't know why this would get out there. I don't know why it would be brought up. I don't know why somebody would be like, oh yeah, the Steelers inquired. You should really tell somebody about this.
Yeah.
It just seemed like other than, God, I'm bored. There's nothing out here. Let's just see what happens. Let's nuke the internet and say, I'm going to tell you the Steelers called about him. And I don't know the point of the whole thing. Like Jacksonville adamantly came out, nope, never took a call. This never happened. And
well, they allegedly already shut it down. Like they took the call and they told him no right away.
Yeah. Just like the Steelers never took the call about the Bears inquiring about Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
Nope, never happened. We never, no way would we do that. It's like somebody talked to somebody and said it. So I love it.
Yeah.
It gives us stuff to talk about. And by the way, I would rather trade for somebody like Trevor Lawrence if we're trading for a quarterback than Matt Stafford, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold. Well, wait, Darnold's a free agent. JJ McCarthy. I'd rather trade for Trevor than any of those other guys. Mainly because JJ McCarthy is probably going to cost you the same, despite what people think, he's going to cost you the same first and second round pick that Trevor's going to cost. And he's proven and shown absolutely zero in the NFL. And
I think he's going to fall on his face in the NFL. I don't think that kid's that good. I never did think he was that good.
I mean, we've talked about that, but people are like, oh, well, they have Darnold. Okay, do you think just because they have Darnold, they're going to just let this guy go for peanuts? He's on
they're keeping him.
Contract. Yeah, people really need to think business before fandom. It's like you're going to really get rid of a rookie contract, first round pick for sixth pick? Nope. So, no.
So let's say by some miracle this trade actually does happen. What impact do you think this would have on the Steelers team?
I think it would be a positive impact because I don't see how something like this would be a negative impact. I think it's a future building impact. Like I said, I don't think it changes much of 2025's status unless they all of a sudden redo some contracts and sign players that I don't expect them to get. I think it definitely changes the fan base's perception more than it changes inside the organization. Like everybody outside would be like, oh my God, Steelers are making this big move. And we start screaming about how the organization has finally changed their ways until they lose in the first round of the playoffs. And then we all start going back to the same organization.
Trevor Lawrence.
Right. But also that's the other thing, he's going to come back and he's going to be working with Arthur Smith. It's not like he's coming in and working with Ben Johnson. So we do have to temper.
I think he's this might sound crazy, but I think he has a lot of similar traits. He's much better at them, but he has a lot of similar traits to Ryan Tannehill when he had his best year with Arthur Smith. I mean, the tall, the big, athletic, mobile quarterbacks who can throw the ball downfield. I mean, Trevor Lawrence has a lot of those same things that Arthur Smith liked in Ryan Tannehill.
I think
which is kind of
great
interesting.
Smith system. I'm just saying that don't expect him to come out there with this idea he's going to throw 4,800 yards, 42 TDs, and 3 picks. He's not. We're not going to see some revolutionary air attack all of a sudden. We're still going to see a heavy run game, play action game, because both of them are geared to that. Like I think when I watched Trevor Lawrence, his best games were when they had the run game going and he was able to play action off of that and use his legs, and it was able to go down the field with that. So
Yeah.
now if we
I-
can trade our first, second, and a third round pick for him and Brian Thomas Jr. or whatever his name is, I'm happy.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Wrap
It'd
them
be a
all
great
together.
thought, though. Maybe package George Pickens to send back down there.
I'm perfectly fine with that.
I think
Daryl Patterson in there.
I think you're going to take a trade off if you made this deal, right? So like this is the deepest D line draft that you've got in a really long time, and so D line being such a huge need for the Steelers is like a perfect draft to gun it. And this is where me and Alan, when we were talking, I completely understood where we were at, and that's exactly why I said I would not be mad at all if we took a D line in the first round, because you're going to get a guy at 21 that should be going probably at 12. Like in most draft classes, like we were talking about Kenneth Grant, that dude is a really good player that could fall to 21 that has absolutely no business being around 21. But if you trade your first and second, you've lost that guy. You've lost going after a guy like Tyreek Williams. You've lost going after a guy like Deion Walker, Walter Nolan, like some of these really, really good, defensive linemen. But by the same token, it's a quarterback-driven league. And if you can get the quarterback, and like I said, with that contract that he's under, you basically would have 4 years, essentially 3 to 4 years for sure, with Trevor Lawrence as a young guy. You could almost see the reason why this trade would make a ton of sense from the Steelers' perspective. I don't know why it would benefit the Jaguars, but I mean, it would definitely benefit the Steelers.
I don't think they would be able to do it because obviously Tennessee would stop them. I don't see Tennessee wanting to do it, but to get Jacksonville's Steelers' first pick at 21, their extra second. So if Jacksonville wanted to, they could, in theory, be like, okay, we're going to trade up in our draft now in that first round, give up our first 2 first-round picks, move up and pick another quarterback. I don't see why they would want to do that, but that's the only thing I can think of is like they would want to move on from Trevor to another quarterback. But I don't see that. I don't see them doing that either.
I'll tell you this. I was told by somebody who was at the Senior Bowl, and I don't want to throw names out there and I don't want to take credit for anything, which is the only reason I'm like bringing this fact up, that it was not me who came up with this information, but I was told Tennessee does not want any quarterback in this draft.
I can see that.
So there's a realistic chance they could trade out of this spot, or they really like the kid out of Penn State.
The
edge rusher. I don't know why his name's not coming to my head right now, but they really, really like the edge rusher from Penn State. Let me see. I have no idea why this is like not coming to my head right now. I think my Abdul Carter. Jesus Christ. Yeah, Abdul Carter. But yeah, they really, really like him. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that top pick. But
I also think if the Steelers moved out of the first and second round, I still think that the defensive line is deep enough that they can still get a stud nose tackle in that third round. Not the guys necessarily that everybody would love, but I think there's a couple guys that possibly would drop down there into that third round that they would still be okay with. But that would also be at the expense of a wide receiver or corner at that point.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I really feel like I have no knowledge of this, but I really feel like they're going to get a corner in free agency. I still think they'll try to draft somebody, but I don't think it's going to be a high priority by the time the draft rolls around. I think they're going to try to pick up a corner in free agency. And honestly, if they could get a guy like Asante Samuel Jr., especially if at a right contract, 25 years old, he's still really young, very talented kid, very fluid, can play inside, can play outside. He would kind of be the starter on the outside, and then when we get into like the dime packages and stuff, he could slide inside and have Corey Trice playing on the outside.
Man, I would love for that to happen. I would love to see the Chargers not be able to tag him or sign him and have him go out there and allow the Steelers to actually make that spot. It'd be probably the first free agent signing that they made that I would just fall over my feet over and be like, oh my God, I can't believe they actually did this.
Yeah.
'Cause
So let me ask you this, getting back to Lawrence for a second here. Because this is oddly enough a debate. Knowing what know has been reported about the Lawrence trade, and assuming what you and I both are kind of in agreement on with Justin Fields, would you rather have Justin Fields for his compensation, or would you rather have Lawrence at the compensation that's been reported?
I would. That's a tough question because I think they're both about the same. I've always been a Fields guy. I think I'd rather just have Lawrence just a tad bit more, just because I'd have him locked up and I wouldn't have to worry about dealing with the contract. The only thing that would make me go the other way is the fact that if I can get Fields for, without having to spend the picks, that's the only reason, right? So the difference, I think, in the whole thing is you got Fields, no picks, versus we already kind of know what we can get with Lawrence. So,
I mean, if Fields is going to come in around the same price as what we think he's going to come in at, you're talking about a difference of maybe $2 million, and that doesn't include the trade compensation because Jacksonville's going to eat some of that.
Yeah.
I can't even see them making this trade.
Jacksonville?
Yes, I don't know. The more I play around with over the cap, I'm like, I don't see how this makes sense for them. But I mean, they're going to carry dead money. You're going to have to get the team to carry something. Jacksonville's going to eat something on that contract. It may not be a ton, but I mean, you'd essentially be talking about in 2025, Fields and Trevor Lawrence really being about dollar for dollar the same. It's the difference of the first and second round pick that you'd be giving up to acquire Lawrence. To me,
well,
in that, just looking at that scenario alone, I'm taking Trevor Lawrence 10 out of 10 times. There's no doubt.
And here's the way I look at it too, though, is what if the difference is you have, and that you already pretty much answered it because you're going to probably take Trevor no matter what, is that I don't see Fields signing a contract more than a 3-year contract.
I don't think so either.
Then that's why I would lean to Trevor's. At least I know I got him locked up for 5-6 years. Fields, I think he's going to do the 2 or 3 years, because I think if I land really well this next year, I have the full season to start, then I can maybe redo my deal next year or the year after and get that $30 million quarterback pay.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why I'm hesitant on Fields, is over Trevor, is just simply if Fields hits, which everybody wants him to, that price tag goes up almost immediately, versus Trevor, if he hits, we can still be like, man, you're still under contract for another 4 years, man. You ain't doing nothing.
Yeah. I can tell you I've watched a lot of Justin Fields, both at Ohio State and in the NFL. And I saw those two head-to-head twice in the college football playoff, and Trevor outplayed him both times. And I think it's pretty easy to say he's outplayed him so far in the NFL. I mean, Chicago was kind of a dumpster fire for Justin Fields, but I don't know that Jacksonville's been a ton better. Trevor, I think, in my opinion, is just a much, much better quarterback.
That's what I said. I like what I've seen from Trevor so far more than I like Justin. The difference is Justin has the athleticism. He's more athletically gifted than Trevor. I just think Trevor's is a better thrower of the football, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The only difference to me is that, once again, I got Trevor locked under contract. I don't see, unless Fields signed a long-term contract at a bargain rate. Let's say he signed a 6-year deal that averaged out at $11 million a year. Then it's like, okay, well, I'll take him 6 years at $11 million a year. I'll take him over Trevor then. But otherwise, no, I just don't. Yeah, I'd take Trevor.
Yeah. Do you think if again, I keep saying this like I think it's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. But if Pittsburgh makes this trade and Trevor agrees to come here, do you think there's certain things that would need to change in either the approach of the way the Steelers are going to try to build out this team? How would you kind of look at where we are now and what we would need to do to surround Trevor or put him at least in a position to be like
I think things need to change even if Trevor doesn't come here, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
But if Trevor comes here the first, and we're like I said, regardless, I'd want to go try to get Trey Smith as the guard. I want to get done with this offensive line. This offensive line needs to be done, needs to be put to bed. It needs to be solidified. And that's the first thing. If he came, that would be the one thing that I'm kind of still miffed about is that we're still going with the same offensive line coach. Like that kills me. So if he comes in, I'd have to have a look to be like, okay, is Arthur Smith's scheme going to fit him? And I think the system fits him. Does the blocking work too? Okay, blocking works. Get the linemen, but we need better wide receivers. I don't want to hear this. Well, Arthur Smith's system doesn't need a second wide receiver. That ship sailed last year when we saw Van Jefferson get what was a total 200 yards for the season. That ship's gone. We need a second, and if that George Pickens is a second, okay, great. We need that first. If George Pickens is a first, and pray to God we find another first to help him out because that was painful.
Right.
And I don't know what happened to Calvin Austin, and this is why all those reports that go out there and talk about, was Wilson able to audible? Was he not? Who made that call? Austin was on a tear for like 2 weeks with Pickens out. Pickens comes back, and then Austin disappeared like my diet does after Thanksgiving. It just totally went away. I'm like, I don't understand it. I don't know where he went, but it was just like, why? He just vanished for those last like 3 games of the season. 2 of the regular, 1 in the playoffs, just gone.
Now, when Alan and I were talking yesterday, he thinks that this team needs 2 wide receivers, even keeping George Pickens. He's basically in favor of you need a wide receiver 2 and another wide receiver. Deebo Samuel's name is a name that's getting thrown around a lot in the trade compensation. Doesn't sound like it's going to be too bad. Would you try to make a trade for Deebo?
I don't get why people hate. Like I read the comments about not wanting him. I don't get it. I get it if they want like a first or second for him, then no. I don't get like the rumors like around like the 3rd or 4th, like why people are so standoffish about that. Like if we can get him for a 4th round pick, I'd do it in a heartbeat. I think he might not be the same guy he was 3 years ago, and he might not be the same guy not in Shanahan's system. But he's better than anybody else we got on the team outside of Pickens. And even then, it's debatable.
Yeah.
He's more than a willing blocker. And guess what? Something that when I'm looking over the mock draft that we haven't had, we have no wide receiver that does anything but a wide receiver, right? They're watching those highlights of watching Hines Ward and Randall L back there being able to toss passes or run out of the backfield. Man, I miss those days where it's like, oh my God, there's a reverse. Oh, he's throwing it. Now it's like, hey, look, the wide receiver's running down the field. Oh, he's getting an end around. They're not throwing it. We know they're running it. They're no capable. So Deebo, at least we know, hey, if he lines up in the backfield, he might run it. He might throw it. He might go out for a pass. I wouldn't mind taking a shot at it. He wouldn't be exactly my first priority in trading, but as far as reasonable targets to go for, I just don't get why people are so against it.
I'm one of those people against it.
Are you?
Yes.
Okay, why are you against it? Let's say a 4th round pick. Why would you be against a 4th round
pick? Well, I think the way Alan was talking yesterday, I said if 4th or 5th, he agreed. So I don't think the 4th round pick's that far off. I think it's a possibility that we could get him for a fifth. And I kind of said that pretty early on, way before I even talked to Alan about it yesterday. But he's 29. I feel like he's his wear and tear on his body, I think, is showing more last year, especially. And that could be a 1-year thing. I mean, I totally understand that could be a 1-year thing. Guys get banged up. I don't know that Jaylen Warren's going to be a guy who is going to go through injuries every single season just because he had a rough year last year. So, I could give that same courtesy to, Deebo Samuel in this case. But I think Deebo, there's been more of a track pattern of the injury. We've seen him miss time throughout the last few years, really. And I mean, he's kind of a 1-year rental the way his contract's laid out right now. So you'd have him for 2025, but then you're not paying him $33 million the next season, even if a lot of it isn't guaranteed. Because I mean, you could cut him that next season and save $22 million, but you'd have 10.75 in dead money. So I don't know. His contract's not bad for 25. I think if you're doing that kind of a deal, you're going to be looking to do a restructure with him, and I'd be interested to see what the restructure would look like to see if it makes a ton of sense. Maybe you add a couple of years. You pay out 25 as is. You restructure 26 and give 27 with maybe an out in 27. So at least you get a couple of years out of him. That puts him at 32 or 31 going into his 32 season. That part kind of makes some sense. I don't think the trade compensation for me is the issue. I just think that I know you're not getting more than 2 years out of him, and everything that I've been talking about so far in the offseason is looking forward towards the future. And I don't think he's the future. I think he's a stopgap. And I get it. You're going to get some guys on your team that are going to be some stopgap guys. And if you're going to get a stopgap guy, he's definitely not a bad one to go for because, I mean, he still has a lot of value so far with where he's at in his career. I just think he, to me, looks like a guy who, when he hits the wall, he's going to hit it hard. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of where my hang up is on him. It's not like it's like a hard no for me, but it's just kind of like is this really setting the team up for the future? Like, to me, I would rather have a guy who's a couple years younger and a Darius Slayton who doesn't show the wear and tear. I don't know. That's why at quarterback, I don't want a lot of these names that are out there being thrown around. Alan and I talked about that yesterday. I don't want Derek Carr. I don't want Kirk Cousins. I don't want Aaron Rodgers. Even Matthew Stafford, he'd be a great addition, but you don't have the team to win now. If we were in a position where we're a quarterback away, I make those moves all day long, but that's not reality right now for us as an organization. So,
and that's why I agree. And I got
if they sell it as a stopgap, I'm fine with it. Like I said, if they sell him like this is going to be a stopgap wide receiver, this allows us to draft heavy in our defensive line. It helps us draft a young cornerback to get that room younger and more athletic. We get to take care of maybe 2 running backs in this draft instead of drafting a wide receiver somewhere down. Okay, you can sell me on that. I'm cool with that because you're telling me here's where we're going. We're getting this guy this year so we can go get a quarterback and then another receiver somewhere down the line next year.
Yeah,
I'm cool with that.
Because that's how I'm looking at it. That's why I said for a 4th round pick, right? So if I get him for a 4th round pick, my thought is I'm re-signing him or restructuring his deal for about 3-year deal. So I get that 2 years out. Maybe I get that 3rd year, depending on how he is at that point. But if you ask, and then that's also why I said he's not the prime target where I'd want to go with. If I'm trying to trade for a wide receiver, he's not the guy that I'm like, this is the guy I want. Just exactly what you said. Like all those other names that you listed, people talking about trying to trade for those guys or signing Aaron Rodgers. It's like, no. You're really going to bring in somebody like that thinking what? That all you want to do then is to win 1 year, and all it's going to win might be a playoff game. And I don't see Rodgers coming in being any better than Russell Wilson was. And what did he do in the Jets? He had 2 years, played 18 games. and didn't even finish above, 500? Did he finish above 500 with the Jets? I don't even think he did.
No.
So you're going to bring him into the Steelers to do what? Because he's buddy with Tomlin when he goes to do the fake or do the quick snap, and Tomlin calls a timeout, and they give them the, hey, gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, no. And Carr, the only reason why I take him is because he does the Wilson deal where he comes dirt cheap, and then you hope he backs up Fields or somebody for a year. That's the only reason why I do that. And I love the idea of Stafford, but like you said, that's a win now move, and we're not winning now. And let him go to a team that's capable of winning a Super Bowl right now. No, I'd rather see us go for try to make a trade for Garrett Wilson. I'd rather give up a 2 this year and a 2 next year for Garrett Wilson than a 4th for Debo. I just don't think that happens. So, hey, you're going to give me a 4th for Debo? Okay, cool. I'll do it.
I think the other hang up for me with Debo is just kind of where my thought process is with the draft this year. A ton of this stuff's going to change between now and the draft because the combine is going to roll around. We're going to see free agent signings, and we're going to know how the shape of the roster is going to look at that point in time. And so a lot of this is going to be fluid and changing. But for me, I think my hard line stop is a 5th round pick for Debo because I keep saying that I want it to happen. I don't care what happens in free agency. I want 2 defensive linemen taken between rounds 1 and 4. I want 2 guys in this draft. Those are guys that are going to be long-term starters and or important role players in your organization. So, I think that's part of the hang-up is because I feel like the compensation is going to end up around 4, and I don't want to give up a 4th round pick because I think that's going to be a super valuable pick in this draft for us. I honestly think that, and I think it's going to be between the first 4 rounds. You're going to get 2 defensive linemen, a corner, and a wide receiver as things stand right now. I don't want to lose one of those because we want Debo Samuel to be here for a year or maybe 2. I'd rather get the guy who's a younger guy who can be productive for 4 than get the guy at wide receiver who could be productive for maybe 1 or 2 years.
And I get that. My hang up is we've done this dance with 49ers last year, and I don't want to do it again. That's the biggest thing. It's not. I don't want to sit there and all the way through the draft. Then after the draft, oh well, we might still trade for. No. I don't want to do that again. I don't want to hear it again. He's not Brandon Ayuk. It's okay. We're gonna make this deal. No, okay, let's move on. I don't want the Steelers to sit around pining for a guy and watch everybody else walk away. That's my biggest concern, that they get stuck in this tunnel vision again. Like this is the guy we need. We have to have this one guy. We're going to be all in on him. And oh, wait, it's week 1 and we don't have him. No, our wide receivers are good enough. We're good. Our room's great. Nobody believed it when he said it. Nobody believed it at the end of the year.
No.
Even Mike probably in his room after he got out of the press conference was like, ain't nobody believe that.
I don't even think this is going to be a bit controversial. I don't think Debo Samuel is even a top 20 wide receiver in the NFL. And I know statistically he's there, but I feel like it's a lot more to do with the Shanahan offense. And I try not to label guys as like system guys, but I actually think he's a system guy. He's benefiting from that system in San Francisco probably more than a lot of other players. Like Ayuk, you could see the talent was there. He could succeed in a lot of different offenses. I don't think Debo's a very good route runner. Like I think he's a mediocre route runner. He's got pretty good hands, but he's not like this super huge contested catch guy. He does pretty well. Like he's a jack of all trades and a master of none. Like that's how I view him. And I just can't see him being an answer for Pittsburgh. I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of crazy on that, but I just feel like that's where he's at to me.
But see, that's what I was saying, that we're missing in Pittsburgh is a jack of all trades type of wide receiver. And I think that would be nice to have. When you talk about top 20 wide receivers and I go, okay, well, which guys are true wide receivers? I don't know if I would say, okay, Debo would be in my list of guys that I'm like, all right, he is a wide receiver. But I'm like, okay, well, he brings stuff to the table that some of these other guys, might not bring to the wide receiver table. You go back and look at the debate between Calvin Austin, what's his name from the Falcons? Now his name is escaping me. And then Antonio Brown, when those three guys were playing, and everybody was like,
Are you talking about Julio Jones?
Yeah, Julio Jones. Everybody had Brown listed as their third wide receiver. And basically it was because, well, they were the bigger names and they were built bigger and they were the bigger. But Brown did so many little things. His route running was so much better than them. Like he worked and he was the best wide receiver. And that's kind of where it's like, okay, that's why I'll take him. So Debo might not be the flashiest, best contested, best route runner, but he does enough where he makes up for those type of things. But like you said, product of the Shanahan system. He's up there in age. That's why I don't want to overpay him. Like if they set a 4th round pick, that's as high as I'd go if he's going to redo that deal. I don't want to give up a 4th round pick. And it was the same thing with Devontae Adams last year. I don't want to give up that for a guy who's coming in for one season and he's gone. And everybody said, oh, well, Adams will redo his deal. Did Adams redo his deal with the Jets? No.
And he knew what he was doing. He was hitting free agency the next season.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And he knew the only way he was staying with the Jets is if Rodgers was going to stay with the Jets. Rodgers didn't, and now he's not going to redo his contract, and he's going to be a free agent because they're going to cut him. So, no, I wouldn't make the deal for Adams, and I'm not going to – if I'm taking on but Debo, I want to redo his deal before I take him on too.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, they gave him permission to talk to teams already. They can talk trade. They just can't do anything until after the March 10th deadline.
Work on Tim Jennings if they would let him talk, because there's a guy I wouldn't mind the Steelers talking about. Tim Jennings. They're going to start selling pieces.
Yeah. You talking about Juwan Jennings from 49ers?
Yeah. Sorry.
Juwan. Yeah. I think they view him as their true number 2. I don't even think they think Ricky Pearsall is the number 2. I think they think Jennings is the number 2 out there. But I think he's a pretty nice player, honestly. I don't think he gets enough recognition for what he does in that offense.
I liked him for his toughness and his blocking, and then his ability to catch the ball. So it's like, well, Pearsall's there, and now you guys have no choice but to keep Ayuk. So if you're going to sell somebody, if I'm the Steelers, I'd be like, so you got Brandon or Debo. Oh, you want a 4th round? Well, what are you asking for Tim or Juwan Jennings by chance? Kind of use Debo to get into the talks for him. Be like, well, he's not as great as Debo, so maybe how about we give you a 4th for him instead? He's younger.
Yeah, I'll say this one last thing about the Debo situation, because you kind of brought this up already. I wouldn't wait. If they're going to mess around in the trade and try to strong arm you into a trade, I wouldn't lose out on other guys because it's a short list. Just to kind of run through this real quick. If you were the Steelers, Stephon Diggs, 31 years old, would you want Stephon Diggs?
No.
Higgins, we already know the answer to that one. So what about Keenan Allen, 32, almost 33 right now?
No. Both because of simply because we're not in a win now situation. Want to point that out. It's not because of their talent. It's just not a win now situation.
Amari Cooper, he's currently 30, about to be 31.
Same thing. No.
Chris Godwin, he's 28, getting close to 29.
I'd take a ride at him depending on where he wants his money.
So what would be your top cap dollar for him? Because he's a huge name that everybody's going to start throwing around between now and free agency.
T is going to be 30, we're saying, right? Just let's say 30.
Oh, he's going to make 30. I think he's going to get over 30 million.
So
I think T Higgins, depending if he takes a team-friendly deal, if he hits the open market and he does not just try to go back to Cincinnati, he's going to be 34 million.
Okay, so 34. We're going to go with the bars 34 for T. So Goodwin, I'd say 28.
He made 20 exactly this year. So I could see that.
Would be 28. Now, if he was at 30, then Goodwin, I would say, would be 25.
Brandon Cooks, he's already 31.
I love the guy. I really do. But once again, I just don't see it as a win now situation for him. So long term, he'll be on his 35th team by next year. So, no.
Yeah, something like that. He's played on all of them.
Dude,
Deontay, would you bring Deontay back?
I would
He's
because
28 and a half.
I would because it'd be cheap. I don't see him being expensive at all.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants that. I mean, from the organizational standpoint, nobody wants him back. Hopkins, 30. He's almost 33.
He did nothing for the Kansas City Chiefs. I hear he might end up in Washington. Have fun with that. No thanks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live with the Vince Williams as my DeAndre Hopkins moment.
Mike Williams. Would you bring
Nope.
Mike Williams back?
No, we're good.
Robert Woods, he's almost 33.
Nope, we're good.
Now you did talk about Hollywood Brown, 27, almost not quite 28, almost 28.
Because I can see us signing. I can see him signing somewhere for 1 year, 2 year for 10, 12 max at most.
Yeah, he made 7 this year, so
he's going to be on a prove it again deal at most. At most,
Yeah.
he would be like 10 to 12. So why not?
Darius Slayton, I think he's my favorite guy on the list, honestly.
Do it too. I'd sign him.
Then you really start getting in the weeds here. KJ Osborne, DeMarcus Robinson, Nelson Aguilar. I mean, DJ Chark, Matt Collins, Tyler Boyd. Like
Shark would be the first one that you mentioned out of those where I would want to take a run at. Because I think he's better than what we know. I just think that, and his age is still under that 30 limit, and I don't think he'd be expensive at all.
You know who's kind of an intriguing name on this list who would not cost hardly anything? Nick Westbrook-Akine.
Is he a free agent?
He's a free agent from the Titans.
But
27, almost 28 years old. He made $2 million this year. He plays a lot in the slot.
I thought he was,
but he's a bigger body guy.
I would take if he's a free agent.
He's interesting. Yeah, I mean, outside of him, like you start getting down into Rondell Moore, Justin Watson, Tutu Atwell. You can bring Steven Sims back.
We can bring Gunnar back. Gunnar Oslowski's on that list.
Van Jefferson, Van's on here, so you can pick up Van if you want to bring him back. You need another wide receiver too. Yeah, I mean this wide receiver market is not good. Like if you wait and you miss on some guys, you're not getting anything worthwhile.
A guy who probably be over 30 when they start that I would take a run at is Noah Brown.
I like Noah Brown.
Yeah.
I wanted them to get him this year actually, but that didn't work out. So I talked about him quite a bit actually.
McCall Hardman is one of those tough guys because man, he looks really good when he's in Kansas City and looked really horrible with the Jets.
You forgot he was in the NFL after he left, and then he's like back in Kansas City. Oh yeah, forgot about him.
Right.
So
and he seems like he's been in the league for like 10 years and he's only 27.
I know.
So
yep.
He's also like one of those 5'5" guys.
Yeah, he's small. He's definitely very small.
You already got one of those.
Yeah. Oh, we got plenty of those. I think we got more than we need.
So that's my issue. That's one of the reasons why it's like I can make an idea for a run at Debo. I'd rather, like I said, try to see if I can finagle Jawan Jennings off their list. But after that, it's like if you don't get T, you got to go for the draft.
Yeah.
Then you're forced trying to get somebody in a round that you don't want to take.
Yeah. I mean, that was a large part of my, I didn't put that exactly correlation together, but that is a large part of why my argument is to go get Emeka Buka early. I mean, aside from like the character and, the attitude change you would bring into that locker room at that position, like the list is pretty bare. Like it's not, there's not a lot of guys, and even the guys that are there aren't great options. So
that's what I was saying. The average guy is going to make $13 million next year. I'd rather pay some running backs that are top flight running backs what some of these average wide receivers are making.
Absolutely.
Like, honestly, ask yourself, who would you rather pay $8 million to? Hollywood Brown or Najee Harris.
Oh,
Regardless,
I'd rather pay Najee over Brown. I mean, Brown hasn't really done a ton anyway, so.
but I guarantee you Brown is somehow going to make more money than Harris.
Oh, for sure.
And it's just
Yeah.
it's crazy to me. And it's all because of this whole, well, we pay the premium positions. It's like, but there's 4,000 wide receivers. There's one guy that hasn't missed a down ever, or not a down, but a game in the last 4 years at a running back. Let's try to think about that, people.
Yep.
Nope. We're going to end up signing Zay Jones and Braxton Berrios and whoever else Arthur Smith played with.
Yeah. Might as well bring Rondell Moore into the mix, get another 5'9" guy in here, 112 pounds.
Right.
All right, Lowry. Well, that's about all I had today. Do you have anything else for us?
Nah, I'm good.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming back on as always. We'll look at doing this again here pretty soon. So, going to get a lot more interesting once we start to get to see some of these free agents and things start to unfold a little bit. It'll give us a better picture, I think, of where the team's going to be and what direction they're going. So, I don't think it's going to end up being Trevor Lawrence personally.
No, I don't see that happening. It's almost as likely as the Steelers still making coaching changes.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure that will happen before any other coaching changes happen. So
yeah, I think that's going to happen right around the time hell freezes over. So we'll see what. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. As always, for everybody, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. So you get to hear us do a little bit more bullshit about some Pittsburgh Steelers football.
Have a good one.
Thanks. You too. We'll see you.